Everyone.
Let's get this rolling.
Yeah, it's been a little bit of time since I jumped on the last MBSB call. It's a pleasure to be with you. Um, Thanks to Jeff and Jack and Ryan for pulling this together and making sure that every week that we've got great people that are here talking about content that will impact your businesses, our business going forward. So today we've got a special opportunity to hear from, as you guys know, a gentleman that's been with the company for quite a while. And Scott Bennett, Scott, how long have you been? Has it been 20 plus years?
20, yeah, be this August will be 23 years.
23 years. And the incredible thing about Scott and the way that he and his organization have run their business, they focus primarily on the healthcare providers over that time. They've had a little bit of business that's sprouted off from that in kind of different models. And I know everybody across the world has their different models and how they pursue their business, but Scott stayed focused over those 20 years, primarily working with healthcare providers and focused on the S3, the scanner. And so today, especially as we've got the Prism IO that's going to be coming later this year, launching fully in 2026, we wanted to have an opportunity to talk with Scott over the last 20 years. What are some of the insights that he's learned based off of his business model? What are some of the things that he's focused on that have helped him stay consistent? And, the amazing thing is it's consistency focusing on the business model, but that's also, it's resulted in continual growth year over year. And I wanted Scott to talk about some of these business principles that he's implemented over the last 2 decades and the consistency in focusing on that model really paid off. And so, Scott, I've written down a couple of questions. And then once we get through these questions, if we've got a little bit more time, we can just kind of ad lib after that.
Okay.
But I want you to take just a few minutes and describe, over the last 20 years, what does that model look like? Like, how have you spent that time focusing on the S3 with healthcare providers and what have you done? And, how's it
Okay.
performed?
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it. I truly appreciate these calls, the consistency of them. They've been tremendous, every Friday being able to jump on and hear stories from really accomplished people and people that I have some of which I've admired from afar or heard about and it's been great to get to know better. Others, I have really, looked at as mentors and people that I've tried to learn and model things after and having Kenton Worthington on a couple weeks ago, I mean, he's someone I've looked up to for years or decades. And so being able to learn from all of you has been really, really helpful and impactful for my business and just my life in general. So I appreciate everybody's willingness to jump on and share and, be a part of this. And so, yeah, I mean, my story is a little bit different. I mean, 23 years ago, I was in college and I was working as a waiter. And, I honestly I was introduced to this, by a guy that I grew up in Colorado babysitting his kids. And so, his wife and my mom were good friends and we vacationed together sometimes, had done some different trips and went to church together, but I didn't have any background in business. I didn't, I knew I wanted to own my own business. I was majoring in entrepreneurship, but my goal with Nu Skin was, can I make $500 a month and replace my restaurant waiter career? Like that was the goal. It was just how do I work my way through college and and do that track. And it quickly expanded and grew. The first time I got scanned on the scanner was the size of a half a ping pong table, and had this big old tube that, kind of came up, into the roof and had that tile ceiling blowing, had a fan up there blowing cold air on the scanner to keep it cool. And I bought into, to the fact that they were going to be able to shrink this down, that Joe Chang and his team was going to be able to, to create this S1 scanner, and it was going to, be a lot smaller. And in fact, I remember the first international convention I went to about 3 or 4 weeks after I joined the company. They had like 15 or 10 or 15 different versions of it. I remember some of them you had to like put a glove on. Some of them you stuck your hand like inside of it, and they were just using the convention to test different models of what would be the best and what would work the easiest and what's the feedback from everybody. It was really kind of intriguing, honestly, to especially looking back. Um, but for me personally, I didn't know even what an antioxidant was the first time I got scanned. I had never heard the word in my entire life. I was kind of faking it. I was like, and I get scanned and there's one of the scientists at the lab that scans me and he's in this white lab coat and he's turning these dials and stuff and he scans me and I scanned an F. I was at 14,000 and I looked at them and I was like, nice, that's awesome. And I was like trying to walk out of there. I didn't know what it meant. I was just saying, he was like, dude, that's terrible. That's a horrible score. And I was like, well, and I finally looked at him. There were other people in the room, and I was like, hey, I don't know what this is. Like, I have no idea what antioxidants are. I don't know what this score means. Like I'm just trying to kind of fake it and fit in because I was like the only person there that was under 30. And and so I was just trying to fit in and he looked at me and he said, "That means you don't eat any fruits and vegetables. You don't take any nutritional supplements." And I was like, "Okay, how do you know that?" Like that was all it took for me. Like I don't even know the name of the scientist. I don't even know who he was. I wish I did now, but that began the conversation of, okay, well, what does this score really mean? What are antioxidants? Why are they important? And then ultimately, guys, what I bought into from the business perspective very quickly was understanding that we're the only company in the world that has this technology. And if we're the only ones in the world that can measure whether or not your supplements are being absorbed by the cells of your body, if we're the only ones that can tell you how many fruits and vegetables you're eating non-invasively, and then can create this behavior modification, I can learn the rest. Like no one else was giving me a chance to be part of a monopoly type technology, especially at that age. And that's what I saw. Personally, I was like, look, I can learn how to talk about antioxidants. I can learn about nutrition. I can learn about supplementation. I can learn how to build the business and how to talk to people and all that kind of stuff. What I can't and what was so unique was having this technology, was having the scanner. And without that, it wouldn't have, I mean, I was in the middle of 19 credit hours in college and, everything else that goes along with that. I wouldn't have diverted my attention. And so having that scanner and then watching it be able to shrink down and move forward changed everything. But I'll be honest, I got really, really fortunate to have some amazing mentors in the business and and they emphasized subscription and everything was based on subscription and you had to look at it that way. It was a number we talked about. It was what percentage of your business is on subscription and how does that work and why is that important? And guys, that became everything. It's never been about healthcare providers. I mean, it really hasn't. It's been about subscription. It's a subscription-based business. And the only reason we ever talked to healthcare providers, to be honest, was because they can get more subscriptions. Like that was the advantage. Now, having said that, Prism changes all of it because we're not limited on scanners. They don't cost $140 a month. They're gonna cost 300 to 400 bucks, you know, around the world. And so because of that, everybody can build with subscriptions because everybody can look at this device right here and be like, can you get 5 to 10 customers? And when that happens, this thing changes everything. Changes the way in which you're able to do it. And it's just gotten statistically better, but it's also, become so valid. I've sold a lot of different things over the years to healthcare providers and in clinics and different things like that. Do you know this is the only device that has ever had more than two clinical studies behind it that I've sold? Like everything else is like really kind of fringe, and that's medicine. Like that's you come in and you say, we've got this clinical, and you teach the doctor about the clinical, and they're like, that's awesome, let's do it. Well, this scanner has 110 published peer-reviewed clinicals, that make it so powerful and so easy for us to be able to share with anybody, to give you the confidence to be able to scan anyone in the world, your best friends, your parents, your siblings, your children, and know that the number it's giving you is accurate. And then once you have that and you have that knowledge, now you can move forward. I mean, we've talked about it before, but Yale University doing a 10-year clinical on the device itself, that's a huge clinical that everyone should be talking about. Being able to say that they published two outcomes. It wasn't me, it wasn't New Skin, it was Yale. And they said that this was the best device in the world to measure fruit and vegetable intake non-invasively in the human body. And the second thing they said was it was the best way to affect behavioral change. And you can take that in a lot of different ways, but the fact is I look at it number one as a dad. I've got six kids myself, and you know, affecting their behavior is like what you do every day, right? No matter what it is. But when it comes to nutrition, you look at it, your parents were probably the same as mine, where every day it was eat your fruits and vegetables, like eat your vegetables. These are good for you. This is important. But it was a fight because I didn't want to eat them. I didn't like the taste or whatever else. And other than my mom saying these are good for you, she had nothing. I've got the ability to scan my kids and find out where their score is and let them be competitive with each other and go back and forth of who's got the higher score. And now all of a sudden, my 7-year-old doesn't understand much about nutrition, but he knows what to eat to get a blue score. And that changes everything, and that moves people forward. And that's the basis of not only how it's affected my family, but how can it affect millions of others as we roll this out.
Hey,
And
Scott,
yeah, I'm
I
just
want
I'm going, Bucks, and
no.
just
So I wanted to
get it
ask you a
up.
couple of questions.
Yeah,
You said a number of things that I think are really interesting and that we should dive in on. And well, I do have to admit, I'm not a fruits and vegetables guy myself, and so
I'm not
taking
either.
getting my scan score. Yeah, thank you, Jason, for for shaking your head at me and publicly shaming me. But it's interesting when people when they get scanned, it's almost like when they're thinking about it. We brought in a number of different groups into the headquarters these last couple of months, and they've never heard of the scanner, and they're scanning for the first time. And as they're thinking about it, they're like, "Oh, this is, really exciting and fun." And finally, when they go down and scan, and then it doesn't come back where they think it should come back, they're almost embarrassed to even talk about what their score is. And it has that type of impact where it's like, oh my gosh, I had no idea that this is where I was at. And so the behavioral changes that come from that are dramatic. I did want to jump back, and you mentioned subscription and the impact that that's had on your business. Can you talk a little bit more about how you drove subscriptions, how you used that healthcare provider network to drive the subscriptions in your business, and then what sort of impact that's had overall? I know that you've got some stats that kind of talk a little bit about subscription and the impact it's had on your business, and I'm
Yeah.
hoping you'd be comfortable sharing some of those.
Well, I mean, like I said before, this is just focusing on subscription in general has been key. The only reason we talk to healthcare providers is because they can get more of them, But I look at it again, you go to Prism, having the ability to get those out there. I mean, right now there's this, I guess this is how I look at it. Okay. globally, the nutritional supplement industry is $300 billion strong. There's $300 billion a year being spent on supplementation. In the United States, it's 60 billion alone of that 300 billion. Okay? No one knows if those supplements are working. They're just taking it on faith. I mean, really, I mean, guys, think about that and think about like what that means from an economic standpoint. You know, how many businesses are revolving around this, you know, and yet in the wellness industry, nothing else is taken on faith, only supplementation. You don't take a medication without being able to measure it. You don't, you know, I mean, we go to the gym, we measure. You step on a scale every day, you're measuring. How many people have, you know, an Apple Watch or an Aura Ring or, you know, or a Whoop band or any of those other things that measure? And then you come to supplementation and we just say, well, we know we need it, so we're just going to take it. And the fact is, you know, I mean, I always share when I do a presentation, I share a picture of this woman standing in an aisle in a grocery store that just is lined with supplements. And we've all been there. We've all sat in that aisle. We've all stood there. And if you're anything like me, when other people get in that aisle, it's like, well, I can't just sit here. I've got to look like I know what I'm doing, you know? So I grab a bottle, I grab a couple bottles, and I start looking at it like I know what I'm talking about here. I'm like reading the label. I'm like, oh, okay. At the end of the day, I'm buying it based upon how much money I want to spend on that supplement and which label I think looks better. You know, which one has the better color scheme for me? Like that's what I'm buying it off of, and that's what the average person is buying their supplements off of. We can legitimize the entire nutritional world. That's what Prism, in my mind, will do. It will legitimize the nutritional supplement world. And I just think it's just simple enough that if we get enough scanners out there, enough devices, that we can make that happen. Now, the S3, we were never going to be able to do that because we only had 5,000 of those devices globally, and you cannot legitimize a $300 billion market with 5,000 devices. It's just that those numbers don't work. But if you, as you know, the rollout with where it's at, where everyone on this call could qualify to get a scanner by November, you grow between now and then, you're going to qualify. The question is how many of your team are going to get them as well. And so I want everybody to look at it and think, okay, why do I focus on subscription? You know, and why is that important? I think it's also I think part of it, you know, and I don't want to, I guess, offend people, but I've never sold a single product retail in my entire life in 23 years because I focused on Pharmanex, and in Pharmanex, I want them on subscription, not one-time orders, and I want to give them the cheapest possible price to incentivize them to do that. I was on a call with Ryan, and he actually shared this stat this morning that was pretty amazing. That company wide, a one-time order has a lifetime value of about $120, and a subscription order has a lifetime value of over $900. And guys, if that in and of itself doesn't make you want to just shift your entire business to subscription, you know, then I mean we can give you other stats, but that's huge. I mean to look at what that is and then the basis of it. You know, I mean, for those of you that are more seasoned in this call, can you remember? Because I can remember, I can look back and remember the month that I stopped having to worry about my maintenance for my circle group, that I didn't have to worry about that anymore because I had enough customers, I had enough volume, it was on subscription. You know, I no longer needed to worry about that. It changed just that in and of itself changed my mindset. Now, only thing I had to worry about was building my business. It just, there was no stress, there was nothing to do with it. Now equate that to your entire organization of what that does. You know, focusing on subscription today, my business, you know, is 88% of all of my revenue is on subscription. And I look at that and it's comforting more than anything. It's knowing on the first of every month my family's fine, we're moving forward. Like that it's, like Jack just put in there, you don't start over every month. Because that was something that Nathan Ricks used to teach all the time, is the difference between selling real estate or being a mortgage broker or being a salesman for a pharmaceutical company or anything else, was no matter what you did with those things, you were going to get your quota raised, your territory cut, and you're starting over every single month. In a realtor's case, every time you finish the title and the closing and the signing, you were unemployed until you had somebody else back in that room. And it was a constant cycle of doing that. That's what drove me into this business. That once I understood that and started looking at that more seriously and just letting it sink in, it was like, yeah, I could make more money selling a home than I could life pack. But how many more life packs could I sell, and how more often could I do it? And the average customer is going to turn over a home and buy again every 7 years. But this product's going to disappear every day, every week, and every month, and they're going to continue buying it. It changes everything. And so the numbers, I guess some of the numbers that I share from our team of what we've done is of the people, there's a slide that I'm sure everybody has seen that shows your first scan and then your scan at 60 days and your number goes up and everything. And that really is designed to say, look, we guarantee your score will increase or we'll give you 100% of your money back. We show that slide of how that scanner helps do that. I look at that slide and I look at it and say, okay, everybody that we scan that gets on product, we know half of those people end up falling off before that 60-day mark when we can rescan them, or we just don't rescan them, so it's a combination of the two. But of those people, the 50% that got on that we rescan, if they reorder on month 3, once they've seen their score improve, we retain those customers 75 to 80% year over year at that point. And my average customer spends $156 a month. And I look at that and in full honesty, I can talk to the most successful business people I know and show them that model. And then you throw in this device and you say, how many do you want? Because I literally look at this. I've always looked at a scanner. And I don't know if legal likes me saying this or not, but I've always looked at a scanner as it's like a rental property. Every one of these devices every day is going to scan somebody, has the opportunity to explain the nutrition, and those that are interested or those that are deficient can get on product. And that just spits off, revenue for our business. And then if I can get them rescan, if I can teach them how to support that customer and rescan that customer, and keep them on there for 90 days, then I have a 75 to 80% chance they'll still be there at the end of next year. And if I can do that enough times, that's a business model I can get behind. And what I'm
So,
excited about Prism is just how many more people can do that, and what that does.
so Scott, you mentioned another, like, there's a ton of takeaways there. The average order, one order, $100, but a subscription lifetime value is worth $900. And that's where you get the compound effect. And I would dare say, if we went back and looked at the retention of affiliates that you've got within your organization, the retention of brand reps, it's probably double, triple what you would find in other organizations because you have such stability and predictability in your business. Now, you understanding the power of subscription and building a business off that over the last 2 decades, I mean, how is having the Prism be smaller, more accessible? How is that going to change your model? Are you going to diverge from healthcare providers? Are you doing anything different? What recommendations would you give for people that aren't working with healthcare providers?
Well, I think you got to understand. I mean, you keep throwing out healthcare providers, and I think that's what, Stephen Moore and myself and my team. I think that's what we're known for, but that's not where the bulk of our revenue comes from. I think what's really intriguing to me is as I look back, I I have spent 23 years talking about the scanner and life pack and age lock. And that's really, I mean, the guys on the call beforehand were making fun of me because I didn't know even what the name of one of our skincare products was. And they asked if I was using it. I'm like, I don't even know what that is. I use a ton of our other products. Don't get me wrong. I just didn't know what that one particularly was. Um, but 40% to 45% of my entire check comes from skincare. But it wasn't something that I spoke about or that I talked about. I think it's also really, I think it's pretty amazing. When LifePak Nano started ticking up in price because of sourcing and everything else, we stopped teaching about LifePak Nano at our meetings. I mean, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but I want to say 2017, give or take, right about there. That we stopped even discussing it. And but if you look today, my number one product in my group is still LifePak Nano. And I think that number one, that tells you how valuable subscriptions and people that get on product and just stay on product. I mean, the sheer amount of customers that I have that I put on in August of 2002 that are still taking and consuming products is actually pretty staggering. And so a lot of people talk and say, well, but I could sell them this and I could charge them retail and how much would that make? But what's the lifetime value of that customer that's been on Nano or regular Life Pack or Youth or switch between the three for 23 years? I mean, what has that done? When you got one customer that over 20 years pays for a family vacation, like that's pretty amazing. And so you start looking at it differently. Now your question was, does this change my model? It enhances it drastically. It doesn't change it, but it enhances it. And the reason being is because we focused on healthcare providers. It was mostly locations. We were focusing on locations to place these devices because those locations would have people come in every day saying, what do you take? Why do you take this product? Why is that important? What do you recommend? And so they can get 100, 200, 300 customers. I mean, there's a doctor I work with named Jeremy, that Jeremy Anderson, that we placed a scanner in his podiatry office in January, on January 4th. By the end of March, he had 100 and his end of March is 132 customers or patients on product. About 110 of them were on subscription. By the end of April, it was like 170, patients that are on product and over 156 that were on subscription. Like that, I can't do that. You can't give me a prism and say, okay, go do that in 4 months, right? But I also look at it, and where I say it enhances is there's a lot of people that can't go sign up doctors either. And that's not low hanging fruit for them. And and we had Thomas Kogler, who's an absolutely amazing leader, take the scanner back to Austria and just realize, hey, this doesn't work with doctors here, and totally switch to skincare, but still using the same principles of subscription and everything else and acquiring customers. And his customer to brand rep ratio is the exact same as mine, but he focuses on skincare and consulting with them. Like it's uncanny, like how much it mirrors, that we each have, 17 to 19 customers per brand rep, and the spend is about the same. And so what he's done there is amazing as you look at that. But what it comes down to is what's the low-hanging fruit for you? The Prism allows us to do anything we want with it because now for 300 bucks you can get one in your home. I mean, and I'm saying that loosely because they haven't announced exactly what the price is, but $300 to $400 I think is pretty realistic for anybody globally. And so you look at that and say, how many can I have? for some people, it will be easier to work with healthcare providers and go get, you know, 10 to 50 devices placed. You know, and I look at that and I mean the numbers that I model everything after is, you know, if you had 50 devices with 10 customers, 50 prisms with 10 customers each with a $100 subscription, and all you were making was the 5%. But guys, where I say this enhances it is I think for the vast majority of people, it's a lower hanging fruit to follow a duplication model to get 500 devices with 10 customers each. And then that's still the $25,000 a month. And that duplication model is, you know, can you get 5 to 10 customers yourself or $500 in DCSV and go find 5 other people to do the same? And then when you help them do it, can you help them find their 5 people to do the same? And maybe we've got to sponsor, you know, and talk to 10 to 15 to 20 people to get the 5 that get the $500 in DCSV. Who cares? You know, but you start duplicating that out, you know, brand roast with $500 in DCSV. Like this allows that to work. And so for a lot of people, that 500 number is going to be easier and lower hanging fruit. And then I just look at it and say, well, what if half of those people each got one doctor? You know, each got one healthcare provider. Well, now you got 200, you know. I mean, you can look at it, you can play with it however you want. So there was an economist that Nathan Ricks had come speak at a convention we had 15, 18 years ago, something like that. His name's Paul Zane Pilzer. And he wrote a book called The Next Trillion, talking about how the wellness industry would be the next $1 trillion industry. Well, we know today it's like 6.3 trillion globally. You know, it's projected to be 9.8 by the end of 2028. And um, but in that he talked about a couple things that I just think just makes so much sense. That it's just a simple law of economics, you know. And when he talked about it as he went through it, he said at a certain point in time things become ubiquitous. And one of the examples he used was a cell phone. And he talked about, I mean, Buck, you're probably a lot like me, where your first cell phone, it was the free one, right? You walked into AT&T or Sprint or, T-Mobile or whatever, and you're like, I'll take the free cell phone, and sign up for your 3-year contract, and pay for X number of minutes and X number of text messages and all that kind of stuff, right? I mean, you guys remember that? Yeah, that was I wasn't paying for a phone just because that one they didn't have any better functionality. It just looked better. You just liked that design better. So I went for the free one. How come it switched now to where every one of us pay thousands of dollars a year for one of these? And honestly, if you don't have one of these, people are like, what the heck's wrong with you? I mean, why did that switch? Because at a certain point in time, it became too valuable to not have it. And the law of economics it simply states like when you try something new, you're going to go for the cheapest, easiest, simplest way. But if you find any value in it, you will migrate to the best. You're always just going to migrate to whatever's best in whatever industry, whatever you look at, and that's just human nature. And it's actually a law of economics that they teach all over the place. Well, what about supplementation? There's $60 billion in the US and 300 billion globally being spent on it. At what point in time does the world know that they need this device to know if what they're consuming is being absorbed by their body? Is that 10,000, 50,000? Is it 100,000 devices? Like at what point does that start to flip that switch? But I personally believe it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And when we get enough devices, we'll hit that tipping point and it will go viral. it will become ubiquitous, and every supplement consumer will know they need to be scanned by this device. And so if you want to look at large numbers, where that's at, a $300 billion market, I'm not saying we're going to get every one of them, but I'm saying at a certain point, people consuming supplements are going to know they need to be scanned by this device. And every time they get scanned by it, it's going to walk them through selling a personalized solution to increase their score. And how many times are we going to scan people that are consuming supplements from somebody else before they switch and migrate to a company that says we guarantee we'll increase your score or we'll give you 100% of your money back? Like, how many people do we have to scan? And I just think 5 to 10% of that market is doable. I think that's reachable, and that's what I look at. And that's what's up for grabs right now.
God, though, I am fully on board with that. And I am looking forward to it. And truthfully, it's like, when can we get this scanner out in the market? The faster we can get it here, the better. And that's what we're pushing for in the Americas. And I know across the globe, each of the presidents of all the markets are pushing for that as well. We've got a couple of questions that have come in. Mateus, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Mateus is asking, how have you approached the professionals with the scanner? Do you book a meeting and ask to come in to show a new technology and share the vision with what it could do for them? Or how has it been? Would love to get some inspiration, even if it's a difference between US and Europe.
Yeah, it's a great question, and there is difference between the U.S. and Europe. We've placed a number of scanners throughout Europe as well. Um, what it comes down to, though, guys, it's no different. They are no different than talking to your best friend. And quite frankly, the easiest way to talk to them is if you know them, or if you know someone that knows them, right? If you walk into their office and just cold call them, that's a skill. And some people are very, very good at it. I'm not, like that's not a skill I've totally developed. I will say if I'm walking into an office, the best thing to do, take that device and stick it right on top of the receptionist desk. Say, have you ever seen this before? Now be courteous and understand if there's people waiting or whatnot, but if there's time, I'll scan the receptionist as soon as I walk in the door. I'll tell them exactly what it is. I'll scan them because what I've found is more often than not, that receptionist will then get me in front of the office manager or the doctor because I'll end up scanning everyone on the staff because they've never seen anything like it, and the scanner attracts that attention. So I make it all about the scanner and not about anything else. So that's probably the best advice I can give you is scan everybody you can and make it all about the device.
That's great.
Because no,
Marlene,
no one else has that. Everybody's got a supplement, right? But nobody else has the device.
yeah. Marlene says in every country in Europe they have different rules, which I think that's
True.
absolutely true. And we'd have to tread lightly there. But we have Guy. I don't know if it's pronounced Guy or Guy, but Guy, I'm going to say Guy the American way. Did most of your health professionals only put them on subscription and never have the retail on top of this? So was it
Most
mainly
of them,
members?
yes.
Say that
Yeah,
again.
most we what we teach them to do is put them on subscription. And they do that, in America, that's wholesale minus 10%. As a member subscription pricing. Um, Now, some doctors retail, some will have some of it in their office and they'll retail, particularly like eye doctors will retail eye formula to their older patients who, have an objection or, you know, just they don't like to sign up for things online. Um, but even those, once they've done it for a couple months and they see their score go up, they tend to then migrate to the cheapest product, or cheapest price.
That's good. Thanks, Scott. Tom asked the question, what tools did you use, if any, to explain the scanner to people? Did you have any type of visual aids, flip charts? Did you have presentations on iPads? Like, what were the main tools?
Um, Yeah, the main tool is an antioxidant assessment. When you're scanning somebody to get them on product, is walking them through a questionnaire. I think that's the most duplicatable, easiest way to do it. You can get in the weeds, right? I've seen people who have scanned people who have a flip chart and they've got videos and they got all this stuff. That's too complicated. No, most people aren't interested enough to hold their attention for that long, guys. Scanning people just by themselves, having them fill out a questionnaire, just regular normal questions, like there's nothing really sacred to it. It's, do you take nutritional supplements? How many fruits and vegetables do you eat every day? How much money do you spend on supplementation? How important is your health? Are there any health concerns that you currently have?
Do you
Those
sleep
types
six
of
to eight
things.
hours? Do you
What was
exercise?
that? How
Do you
do you,
sleep
yeah,
6 to
do
8
you sleep?
hours?
Yeah,
Because
how much sleep do you get a day?
it's not just about like your carotenoid score, but it's also about the oxidative stress that you've got in your life, right? And
Yeah,
so,
and
go ahead.
I no, I sorry, you're right. It's about, because if you find that oxidative stress, like if you're sitting in front of a bodybuilder who looks amazing, the amount of oxidative stress that's being put on their body is, multiples higher than yours, because of everything they're doing. And so them understanding it that way might even be more impactful than understanding the nutrition side. And so, so you can look at it, multiple ways, but the questionnaire, in my opinion, just asking those questions and walking people through that gives people, the basis for a really good conversation that when they actually do scan them, it leads to product instead of having to jump from here's your score and then say, well, what does that score mean? And you say, well, it means you need to get on this product, right? That just doesn't happen as well.
That's great. Ryan in the comments said there's a bunch of new research that we'll be releasing with Prism that shows the correlation between scan score and many lifestyle benefits like BMI, diet, fitness, etc. Just anecdotally, Ricky and I have kind of a little competition going on scan score. And she was so frustrated as we scanned, and I came in higher than she did. And it's because she's a competitive CrossFitter and like puts a ton of strain on her body every single day. And so she is requiring more antioxidants than I do. But
Yeah.
and so just how much you're working out, how much you're sleeping, the pollutants that are in your environment, like what you're eating, all of these things play a role in the amount of oxidative stress that you've got on your body.
Yeah, and guys, just a quick plug. I think in 2 weeks, Ryan and Steve Hatchett are going to be on this call talking about that particular thing, and so you're not going to want to miss that call. Those guys, anytime those two talk, you don't want to miss it. But yeah, but those things are, yeah, the research they're coming up with and coming out with, I should say, is pretty amazing.
Yeah, and I love it that we've got our scanner certified products, but we also have the other products that reduce the oxidative stress. So you've got increasing the carotenoid count, but you've got reducing oxidative stress. And a perfect example of that is our Mind 360 products with Calm and even with the nighttime formula. If you get more sleep, you're reducing the oxidative stress in your body. Yeah, I believe that that's what Steve and Ryan are going to be talking about here in the next little bit. But Scott, any recommendations or um, any advice that you'd give this group on Prism IO and how to go after the market? We've talked a lot about subscription. We've talked about how to get it into customers' hands, how to, you know, go after the market. What are some closing remarks that you would give, some advice to help people get excited and things that they can do right now to really start their business heading down that direction?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of you guys know that, Charlie Patterson and myself, we've been traveling around the United States doing meetings, talking about and showing people the scanner and being able to just put it in people's hands. Right now, I'd say two things. We've got daily webinars. There's a Vimeo link that if you don't have it, your sponsor can get it to you. But a Vimeo link that has a lot of introductory videos, also recorded webinars from people that have been doing these. I can see, Dr. Ben Lowe, in his presentation, so I can put it in front of different people's hands, either live, because we do those calls, I'll say mountain time just based on Utah, but Sunday nights at 6 p.m., Monday through Thursday at 1 and 6, Friday at 1. And so we've been doing those calls, and we'll continue to do those calls with a lot of different presenters. And so those are incredibly helpful. And you need to start. I guess what I'm saying a lot roundabout way is right now is the time for action. This is the time for activity. We've got to be inviting people to take a look. And if you want one of these devices in your hands come November, you have to grow between now and then. Like plain and simple, that's who's going to get these scanners. I can see Steve Hatchett on here. I know Ryan's on here. Guys, they're going to put scanners in the hands of people who have proven that they're going to use it and that are proven that they're going to grow with it and put it in the hands of anybody else. It's the same thing we would do with any limited commodity, or any limited commodity that we have ourselves. They're going to do that. So if you want a device, you have to grow between now and then. If you want multiple devices, then you've got to get your team to grow with you. And I think it's just that simple. I've shared this, a number of times with my team, but when I got started in the business in August of 2002, the first they were having a meeting in September. And that meeting was at the international convention. Guys, I didn't even know what an international convention was. All I knew was that there was one meeting that I needed to be at that weekend. I didn't know it was a full weekend. I thought it was one meeting for one day. Like that was as much information as I was told. But you had to be in that meeting, and they were going to sign leases for the first 1,000 S1 scanners. And that was going to be the market share, is whoever was in that meeting could sign a lease, and that was going to be the first 1,000 devices that were out in the market. And my sponsor called me like 3 weeks ahead of time and said, look, all you have to work on is getting people to that meeting. Like stop doing anything else and get people to that meeting. And I had 127 people that committed to go to that meeting, and I had about 75 people show up. Those 75 people, they signed leases. Those 75 people were the first people, that was how I launched my business. It was because that was 75 of the first 1,000 scanners were going to be on my team. And so based upon that momentum, that was how we got things going. Now, based on all the activity, they said I'd get a scanner in November of 2002, because I didn't get a scanner till July of 2003. But all it was pre-market and pre-market. And honestly, we moved faster before they came out than after they did, because it's two different businesses, right? When you're talking about building up with the scanner coming, it's easy, and that's all you need to talk about. Once the Prism gets here, well, now you got to also teach people how to scan people to get them on subscription, and that's like two different businesses in and of itself. And so you start looking at it. Thanks, Ben, for throwing that Vimeo library in there. That's awesome. Um, so you start looking at what that's possible, or how to put that together. Right now, you've got to be setting goals for yourself and for your team. It's like, how many of these devices do I want in November? And if I come up a little bit short, I can carry that momentum into January and get them in January. That's fine. Like I'm good with that. But can I get 1, 5? If I'm new, could I get 1, 5, 10 of these devices? If you've been around for a while, can you get 100? You start looking at that, and what can you get? It's going to be based upon growth. And the only way to grow between now and then is create activity. And so, are you getting people every day on those live webinars? Are you using the recorded webinars? Are you getting that out there? Are you following Charlie and myself and other leaders as we travel around the US and around Europe? And, I know Louise Spencer, I've got a call with her tomorrow talking about like kind of the European plan. And I know there's a lot of European, leaders that are doing the same thing over there. Um, and so it's starting to take off, but are you putting people in front of those meetings? We left that scanner meeting and Nathan Ricks and Lon Wardrop and Dan McCormick announced a tour where they were going to do 120 cities a month between the three of them. They were doing 2 meetings a day, 6 days a week between that middle of September and the end of the year. And they announced what it was. And my job while going to school full time was how many people could I get in front of them in every one of those meetings? That was it. That was my job. I wasn't presenting. I was putting people in front of those three individuals because I knew those people would give a presentation that would move my business forward. Those people would get people in and make it work. And so as we announce these different meetings, are you working the calendar and getting people in front of, you know, leaders that know what they're talking about, can answer questions, can show people the vision, and will help move your business forward. And that collectively that's what you've got to do between now and then. And if you're not doing that, you're gonna get passed by. I mean, that's the feeling. I honestly, you know, you I was in LA on Tuesday. So I did Atlanta last Wednesday, Boca Raton Thursday, Orlando on Friday, and then LA on Tuesday. And and guys, what I can tell you is the feeling in that room is this will happen with or without me. It doesn't take any one of us anymore. Someone was going to grab this and going to do it without any one of us. And that keeps me up at night, guys, and it gets me up early in the morning every day because yes, I've had success. I've been focused on the scanner and I've got market share now, but every day I feel this urgency like I'm losing it. Like that market share is passing me by and other people are getting there, and gonna get it. And if I don't have my foot on the gas, someone else is gonna get it. And guys, I don't know about you guys, but number one, I'm competitive. Number two, I feel like there's this abundance mentality, like we're gonna have, and we need more leaders to help us do that. But then I also look at it and it's like, that is really, it's motivating to me. It really gives me this drive of I've got to get out there and I've got to do my part because I'll be darned if somebody who's brand new who hasn't put in the blood, sweat, and tears is going to come out with a bigger market share than me, and that's just how we look at it. And so right now it's incredibly important. I mean, right now is so important for laying the foundation for your business. And every day, someone is moving this forward. And so I just look at it every day. It's like, well, it might as well be me, and every day I add people to that list, to my list of people. I need to talk to this person. I need to talk to this person. I mean, it's just amazing how we put it together. So it's a team effort for sure. But those are the biggest bits of advice I could give between now and November, what you got to do. You're on mute, Buck.
Thank you, Scott. I love that. What you said, Scott, is don't wait to get started. Ryan put in the comments, get qualified for the Prism IO right now. If you're waiting to get started, you're already behind. You guys, this is a huge movement. It's the democratization of wellness in a way that's never been done throughout the history of humankind. And I know that that sounds dramatic, but this is massive. And we're seeing things move forward in technology and also with DNA in ways that we've never had before. Never. And now
Yeah.
we have this device that Scott held up that's in the palm of your hand that not only can it tell you the carotenoids, but there's 6 different light sources in there that as we start compounding the number of people that have scanned on this, there's no telling what else we're going to be able to measure. So you guys, this is the beginning of something massive. And if you're not talking about carotenoids, if you're not talking about antioxidants, if you're not talking about LifePak, Youth, Nano, G3, collagen, you're missing out, like right now. And the other thing is, if you know people that are not on this call that are new skin lifers, like get them here, get them on this, get them to the meetings, get them plugged in. Because if they are not prepared for what's coming, if they're not talking about it right now, the moment that the Prism IO comes out, every single one of them is behind. Okay. And we can't afford to do that. We've got to get as many of these out into each of the markets across the globe as fast as we possibly can. I'm pushing from my market. I want to be the first market across the globe that has the Prism IO, that we can get it into every affiliate's hands. And you guys should all have that exact same mentality. Push your presidents, push your corporate partners to get them as quick as possible. But Scott, I know we've got some more questions that came in. Guys, we're at time. But Scott, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your expertise. Thank you for your energy and the things that you and Charlie and other leaders are doing, going across the country and like raising the flag to say now's the time to get involved. And you guys, hey, Scott, I don't want to inundate you with text messages or direct messages or anything, but I'm going to, Scott. So if you've got messages, I know Scott's a busy guy, but you guys, Scott, Stephen Moore, like there's other people that have been using the scanner, talking carotenoids, oxidative stress, all of this type of stuff over the last, I don't know, 2 decades. These guys have been doing it and focused on subscription. Pick their brains. Don't wait. Get started. And with that, you guys, thank you so much for joining us for the MBSB call. And Scott, thanks so much for being
Thanks
our
for hosting, Buck.
speaker today.
Love working with you. Appreciate all you guys do. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, talk to you later.
Thank you both.
Thank you
Thanks,
very
Scott.
much.
Thanks for the call.
Very interesting.
Thank you.
Bye-bye,
Thanks for the
Martin.
call,
Bye.
gentlemen. Thank you,
Au
gentlemen.
revoir, Jean-Michel.
Awesome
Thank you.
job, guys.
Brilliant.
You
Thank
killed
you.
it.
Bye, Ben.
Killed it.
Jean-Michel.
Bye, Ben.
Good job.